Just as cocky as your mother! No wonder she was my least favorite.
What did you say, you little fucker? I'm about to shank you. I like his mother. He was treating him more better than you ever could. Okay? Erik suddenly grew a dark face, the tendrils in his body glowing in a red misty aura. Something snapped in Erik's emotions and the Demon Lord triggered it.
Don't worry. I'll send you to a place where you'll never have to see her again.
Thank you, Erik. Thank you. Stepping up for your mom. That's awesome. Thumbs up, bro.
War deep within. I can't go through it alone, and I won't leave you on your own. I stand before you now and promise you I am not afraid. I will fight and guide the way. We will rise again to glory then, soar into the sky. If you stop and see, then you just might believe.
Sup guys, the name's Rena Dragneel and welcome back to Seduce Me 2, the Demon Lord. So last we left off, we learned more about Shadow and we get to train a lot more with him. And we were able to be free of that child spirit. So now we're going straight into war. So with that, I'm going to skip some parts because we've already seen. Anyways, with that being said, let us go.
If anything trickles into the side route, you'll be able to handle it. However, there is something I must ask of you.
What is it?
If you are indeed attacked, you need to defend your fiancé the entire way there. Do not let him use his energy.
Are you out of your mind?
When you get to the castle, I will be fighting one-on-one with the Demon Lord. If something should happen to me, then I need you to take over. She is not ready to fight him, and you need to be at full strength to finish him off.
The humans should be able to handle a few imps.
Hell yeah! I mean, Shadow did call me a fine assassin. So, I wouldn't deny that I wouldn't be able to save you, Erik. Do not worry. I stared, listening and reaffirming the order. I couldn't lie. I was nervous. However, I was determined enough to see this through. I looked over at my fiancé with a confident smile. I got this. Don't worry. I got your back, Erik. Gonna protect you because you're my babe. Despite the worried look in his eyes, he nodded and held my hand, trusting me in my decision to agree with Diana's command. Diana rolled her shoulders and looked at the map draped over the war table between us all. Her gaze pierced into the parchment as the aura around her body pulsated in anger.
I will fly ahead and meet the Demon Lord head on. No matter what happens, I will not allow that monster to live.
The pure determination and anger in her voice practically sent a shiver down my spine. She was set on seeing this through to the end, and I was sure that she was willing to even die if it meant taking the Demon Lord with her. The remaining incubi and their wives were asked to stay behind the army and guard the main base, where Rabbit and Fate were stationed. They needed as many eyes as possible in the back of the battle, so the four couples were perfect to keep things in check. As they agreed, the meeting ended and the mental preparation had begun. The idea of the upcoming battle scared me, sending waves of fear and worry up and down my body in response to the thought.
So, my warrior princess, are you ready?
Oh my god, that makes my heart squid joy that he called me his warrior princess. And I'm just like, thank you for acknowledging that I can take care of myself. I had to take care of you. I want to say yes, but I'm scared. Don't say that! I am ready for this! Erik gave me a comforting smile and gently leaned down and kissed my cheek, wrapping his arms around me softly.
I promise. I will protect you from anything that comes our way.
I listened to him speak before nodding, taking in a deep breath. Everything would be okay. We would be fine. I had to believe in myself and get us to the castle when the time was right.
Milites! Et hoc liberati sturei tramcun tuis omnibus conversiris. Sto vobiscum reducitic vos ad spem. Nocte, lavabir mur, arcem, hostium sanguine.
What is she saying?
She said that she will help them gain their freedom, and she will stand with them as they fight this war.
Is that all?
Well, she also said that the castle will be bathed in blood, but I don't believe she means it literally.
I nodded and stared at the back of Diana's head. Part of me felt a little intimidated and jealous of the power she had. She really could make armies bow to her and obey her every whim. At the same time, I knew that she was doing the right thing for this world.
Ele Dio dominati sun nostri. Nos destruet, eo mitere, profundissimum, inferni detractos.
Come, we must hurry.
Understanding the need for urgency, I nodded and rushed forward with the rest of the incubi towards the slope and the mountainside.
Everything is in order. Sergeant Diana's guard are at the front lines, while Shadow is with his legion to the west.
Is our route clear?
We've done what we can to keep your way clear. We'll try to make sure the battle won't break through the path.
I nodded, feeling the need to rush nip at my heels, pushing me forward. My fiancé seemed to agree, gripping my hand and walking my pace alongside me. However, as we finally arrived at the forest line, Faye and Rabbit stopped, looking back at us.
Straight through here. The sound of the war will always be on your right, so do not get lost. You'll be fine, though. Just follow the tree line.
In sync, my fiancé and I nodded in acknowledgement before turning to see the other brothers and their wives. So, this is it.
Remember your surroundings and protect each other.
Okay, James.
Be careful, all right? Make sure you stay safe.
Kick his dead body a couple times for me, all right? Right in the head.
We'll do that, Sam. Okay.
We'll be right here rooting for you and watching your back, okay?
We'll finish this and rush in as soon as we can, all right?
Make sure you kick some serious ass. Show that old goat what he gets for messing with you.
We'll win this. We know we can.
You can do this. We'll see you soon, okay?
I smiled, despite the nerves running down through my body. I held out to my fiancé's hand and gave it a hard squeeze before receiving one back in kind. We'll finish this, then we'll go home. The group nodded before I slowly turned and looked into the tree line, took a breath and rushed forward. Matching my speed, my love followed, weaving through the trees behind me to not lose sight of me. The journey was surprisingly uninterrupted. The sound of the war clashed beside us, causing me to cover my ears a bit from the volume, but I shook my head and pressed forward, not wanting to become distracted. The goal was to get to the castle. I had to focus. Before I could, however, I was pulled back by my fiancé, barely missing an arrow fly past my nose. Whoa! I quickly turned my head and spotted a small group of imps, creeping towards me with one reloading his bow with another arrow. I quickly grabbed my incubus and focused on making us become one with the shadows of the trees we were under. As the dark consumed our bodies, I felt my energy pulse from the amount being used. Still, I successfully dragged us both into the shadow plane.
What? This is new.
You've never heard of this? Really? I am shocked. I looked back at him and smiled with a nod, knowing that he was completely unaware of what I had learned in my training. After all, he had been focusing on improving himself. I lowered my hand to his and grasped it, rushing forward and pulling him along. He managed to trip a bit before following along, keeping my pace. Even as some hideaway scouts and trickling soldiers came in our path, we simply ran through them unseen. It took the man behind me a bit to take in, but he quickly adjusted, knowing that now wasn't the time to focus on that. I, however, felt my energy quickly drain. I was maintaining two people in the shadow plane, after all. It only made sense that it used more energy. Still, I wanted to get as far as I could before returning to the real world. I gripped onto my incubus's hand hard as I began to wane, slowing my run and feeling a heavy wave of dizziness consume my mind. Soon enough, warmth returned to my body and we were both sent back to the corporeal demon world. Of course, it couldn't have been a perfect straight journey without a couple of finally guards at the end of the tree line waiting for us. Alright then. A band of remaining imps caught my eye, taking in that I had successfully maneuvered around their lines and had reached them. I grimaced and glared at the imps, seeing their group of 3 rush at us, despite the weak feeling in my knees. However, I had one last trick up my sleeve. I focused on my shadow, commanding it to come forth and defend me. My incubus and the imps gasped as a dark, shadowy figure of me sprouted from the ground and formed a large sword in her hand. I glared at the imps and pointed at them, feeling my energy quickly drain once again. Get them. On my command, my shadow rushed forward and began to slice through the imps, effectively disconnecting their limbs from their bodies and cutting them open. Each tried to block, but only managed to have their attacks phase through my shadow like mist. They couldn't touch me, but I could kill them. I smirked as my shadow quickly zipped between them in figure 8s, ripping each of them apart before letting them fall to the ground, bleeding out and wailing in pain. That was all I could do before my energy finally forced my shadow back into the ground, a wave of exhaustion rolling through my body. I began to fall forward, exhausted. My fiancé, however, quickly rushed forward and caught me in his arms.
Whoa! Princess, are you okay?
Huh? I looked up to see Erik staring down at me with a deeply concerned gaze. We were safe for the moment, so I merely smiled up at him with a nod. I'm fine. I promise to protect you, like you protect me. Erik let out a small laugh, kissing my forehead and hugging me to him.
You spoil me so much, my love.
Aww. I hugged him back, feeling relief that we had finally arrived at the castle and we were about to rush inside. As we slowly pulled away, Erik lifted me up and helped me to my feet.
Will you be all right?
I nodded, shaking off the exhaustion from my mind. I was ready to end this. I looked up at the castle gates and felt a rush of determination run through me. Whew. Can't make a determination joke right now. Oh well. Let's go finish this. With that, Erik and I rushed forward into the castle. The final battle had begun. Erik and I rushed into the castle and into the main halls, where we could hear Diana and the Demon Lord clashing swords.
I will tear you to shreds!
Ah, shit. As we finally entered the space where the battle was happening, we stopped at the doorway, spotting Diana slamming her saber over and over onto the Demon Lord's sword, which was held over his head like a shield. From the look of it, the Demon Lord was severely wounded and was trying to hold out against Diana's barrage of blows. Diana wasn't looking too well herself, but she seemed to have the upper hand. What was scary was that Diana's face was completely smeared with blood, intensifying the frightening look of rage and anger in her eyes. Every swing was reckless, powerfully thrown to eventually hack into the Demon Lord. To her displeasure, the Demon Lord was able to block each time. Erik and I slowly stepped in, watching as Diana continues to beat steel to steel in an angry rage, trying to find an opening and becoming more enraged with each block the Demon Lord pulled. His body began to glow, pulsing with red energy.
Enough!
With a blast of red lightning, Diana was sent flying back, slamming against a pillar and falling to the ground with a thud.
Ah!
Diana! The Demon Lord seemed to ignore my shout as he stood and began to walk over towards Diana's fallen body. Diana tried to press up on her hands, stumbling and buckling a bit, before she glared up at the Demon Lord while he approached.
I should have waited until you came back, so I could have killed all of you in one fell swoop.
Diana's glare intensified as a large black and purple flames engulfed her body from the rage that had ignited within her.
You bastard!
Pouncing off of the ground, Diana formed a new saber in her hand and flew at the Demon Lord, swinging it to slice his throat open. However, the Demon Lord parried, locking steel once more with her and leaning in with a hard glare of his own.
How does it feel to be the only one left alive in your family? Not even your unborn sister survived!
I want to slap the shit out of him. Why would you kill an unborn? I'm going to fucking kill you. I'm just upset because of that. Diana would have had a sister. But he ruined that, and I'm just like, I wanted to see her sister. Anyways, Diana snarled as she slammed her feet into the Demon Lord's chest, forcing him back and causing her to catch herself on her wings, remaining in the air. The voice that erupted from Diana's mouth sent shivers down my spine.
You don't even deserve the mercy of death!
She agrees with me! She agrees with me! The Demon Lord does not deserve the mercy of death! Erik instinctively placed an arm in front of him, staying put and watching intently. Both of us were sure that Diana possibly had this, but we didn't want to get in the way of her rage, if she was full out going berserk. The Demon Lord let out a laugh before pointing his hand at Diana, summoning a large bolt of red lightning to shoot out and slam into Diana. Luckily, Diana had placed her sword between them and blocked the lightning from hitting her skin. Still, she was slammed back into the pillar she hid before it and held there against the stream of heavy red lightning.
You're losing your power, succubus! Just like your weak parent!
With a tearful scream, Diana began to push back, shaking and gritting her teeth. The wounds on her body began to bleed profusely, but she eventually sent a wave of purple flame-like energy into her sword and letting it climb up the lightning bolt into the Demon Lord's hand. Ooh. The Demon Lord quickly pulled his hand away, revealing a sizzling and burning aura around his palm and fingers. Diana, weakened, fell to her knees, exhausted but not out yet. Her eyes still bore into her enemy, not ready to give up. Erik's turn! Woo! Look at the badass mode, though! I felt myself glare hard at the Demon Lord. He was a monster that needed to be stopped. Erik, feeling my anger, stepped forward and began to summon his ethereal tendrils behind his back and around his form.
Guess it's time to step in.
Yes! Yes! I watched as Erik rushed forward and planted his feet beside Diana, reeling his hands back and punching them forward. As he did, a crown of tendrils shot up from the ground and around his body and flew at the Demon Lord like a spray of arrows. The Demon Lord glared and sliced each attack out of the way, panting from exhaustion, but not ready to surrender. As he sliced through the last one, he sneered at his second son, gritting his teeth.
You!
Erik smirked, licking his lips slightly.
Did you miss me, father?
As he finished his sentence, Erik formed another round of spikes behind him and shot them towards his father, glaring as he blocked and knocked away each one again with his sword. The Demon Lord let out a dark chuckle.
Like I would miss little insect traitors like you.
The Demon Lord let out a howl before slamming his giant sword into the floor, causing the ground to quake and a large crack to cut through the marble and charge at Erik's position. Erik jumped into the air and landed beside the broken earth, sending out another volley of spikes. Luckily, one rammed into the Demon Lord's shoulder, causing him to shout out in pain.
Losing your touch, aren't you?
The Demon Lord snarled before ripping the spike out from his body, letting the wound bleed openly before rushing at his son with his sword held high. However, Diana swooped in and slammed her saber into the path of his sword, forming a deadlock.
I'm not finished with you!
Diana and the Demon Lord pushed against each other, eventually jumping away from each other in aggravation. As Diana landed beside Erik, he stepped in and pointed his hands to the ground, where his tendrils burrowed through the marble and jutted out like a spike trap. The Demon Lord was quick to react, rushing back before the spikes impaled him from below and glared. This match had become an unfair fight for him, but in our case, it was needed to finish him off at last.
Just as cocky as your mother! No wonder she was my least favorite.
What did you say, you little fucker? I'm about to shank you. I like his mother. He was treating him more better than you ever could. Okay? Erik suddenly grew dark-faced, the tendrils in his body glowing in a red misty aura. Something snapped in Erik's emotions and the Demon Lord triggered it.
Don't worry. I'll send you to a place where you'll never have to see her again.
Thank you, Erik. Thank you. Stepping up for your mom. That's awesome. Thumbs up, bro. Bae. I said bro. I meant to say bae. Oh my god. Erik and the Demon Lord then simultaneously rushed forward and at each other, with the Demon Lord raising his sword high and Erik moving his tendrils to wrap around his blade. Erik and the Demon Lord went into a deadlock with the Demon Lord, trying to cut through the hold his tendrils had on his sword. Erik, however, formed more free tendrils and shot them up at the Demon Lord from below, causing his father to release his sword and jump back, now unarmed. Erik smirked as his tendrils snapped the sword in half with insane ease, and tossed the two halves to the side to be forgotten. I watched in anxiousness, hoping this battle would end soon. It was 2 against 1. The Demon Lord wasn't going to win. I, however, kept my distance to make sure he wouldn't attack me instead. I had no energy to fight. Taking in what Erik had done to his weapon, the Demon Lord snarled.
I can beat you even without my sword. Remember who raised you, boy.
You didn't raise him. His mother did. Him and his mother. He raised himself along with the side of his mother. Erik let out a large bark of a laugh as his tendrils sharpened into spikes once again.
I'm afraid you're mistaken. My mother raised me. You were too busy doting on your favorite son to care about me or the others.
Yes, he has a point there. Exactly. The Demon Lord growled, his fist becoming engulfed in red bolts of lightning.
I created you. You owe your very existence to me.
Can you shut up for once in your life and just die, please?
I owe you nothing.
Exactly. The Demon Lord only laughed before suddenly gasping from pain. I had barely seen what had happened, but as I stared at the Demon Lord, I gasped at the sight. Protruding from the Demon Lord's chest was a spray of red spikes, dripping with his blood. I could barely keep staring as he turned and looked to us in shock. I looked over to Erik to see him pointing at the wall behind the Demon Lord, where a collection of spikes jutted through a black void into the Demon Lord's back, effectively skewering him.
You never paid attention. You were blinded by pride, and that will be your downfall.
He's so true. So true. So true.
No! He's mine!
Erik quickly pulled back from his tendrils from his father's body, causing the Demon Lord to fall forward from the pain and momentum. Diana, however, swooped at the Demon Lord and rammed her saber into his chest. A garbled gasp escaping his throat. Another one. Without hesitating, Diana pulled her sword out and stabbed him once again, driving her blade all of the way through him to the hilt and snarling into his face.
Those were for my parents.
Whoa! A third stab directly through the heart.
For my sister!
Aww, her sister! What? Diana, please calm down a little bit. I know you're upset and stuff, but gotta stop stabbing. He's dead now. Diana finally pulled her sword out and rammed the pommel into the side of his head, pushing him down to the ground in a lifeless thud. He was dead by now, eyes glazed over in death's cold, breathless embrace. However, Diana didn't care. Diana quickly straddled his waist, bringing her up her saber and using her magic to shorten into a dagger in her hands above her head.
And for every life you took from this world!
Oh shit! Oh my god! The sound though! Maddened, Diana began to violently slam and pepper stabs into the Demon Lord's chest. Erik rushed over and wrapped his arm around me, covering me from the sight, but he was unable to block the sound of Diana's sob-filled screams with each stab. I became a bit frightened at Diana and how she was releasing her anger. However, it was entirely justified. He had taken everything from her and had caused worldwide chaos. It was only natural to demand revenge, even after death. This was her last stand with him, and she had dominated his very corpse with her blade, uncaring of the lost spirit no longer within it. It went on for far too long, to the point where Erik had to let me go and walked forward, pulling Diana off of him. She began to flail, dropping her knife and letting it fade as it hit the ground into nothing.
No! Let go!
Diana!
Erik pulled Diana to her feet and gripped her shoulders, shaking her and glaring into her eyes.
Enough!
Erik's right, you need to calm down a bit. And there's a fly or an ant on my screen. It's just there, so I'm just gonna not bother it. Diana's eyes were bloodshot. Diana, please don't stop. I'm gonna cry. Please don't. Desperate to keep striking the dead body, but filled with emotion and broken inhibition, As she finally took in Erik's words, she shut her eyes and dropped to her knees, releasing a wave of sobs and cries. I walked over to Erik's side, pitying Diana. She must have seen so much death. This was her solace and chance to let go. To know her family was gone because of him rushed pain into my heart, but I knew it was finally over. They were avenged, and so were the many people who died under his hand. The Demon Lord was dead at last. I felt a weight lift off of my heart and spirit, proving to me that the curse was broken and that the chain that bound me to the abyssal plains was gone. I could go home. I hugged Erik's arm to me, finally letting out the sigh I was holding in relief of the situation. Erik smiled and kissed my head.
It's over now.
Yeah, we can go home now. A wave of joy rushed through my body, happy to know that I was free to go home. I began to become overjoyed with the idea of returning, walking across the aisle and marrying Erik before returning to my normal life. Life in the demon world was an adventure, but it was time to finish this and leave. I smiled to Erik before kneeling down and placing a hand on Diana's shoulder as she cried, causing her to look up at me. I could only smile at her, try to relieve some of the heartache and burden she was releasing. It's over, Diana. We won. A small breath of silence ran through the air before Diana wiped the tears from her eyes and nodded, still shaky from the experience.
It's over.
I nodded and gently helped Diana stand before taking Erik's hand and walking towards the entrance of the hall. Diana, however, turned back to look at the Demon Lord's body, stopping us in our tracks.
Was this all worth it? I lost my family because of him. There was so much bloodshed.
Diana, hold on. Sorry, an ad popped up. I guess you guys couldn't see it, but anyway. Diana, I'm sorry. It's my fault. I'm sorry. I stole Erik, and he was the only chance of you getting your family, and I'm sad. Diana tightened her fist at her side, gritting her teeth and shutting her eyes.
I didn't get to say goodbye to my family. My sister.
I'm gonna cry, stop. I felt another wave of empathy run through my body at her words. She wasn't really alone, though. She had Sarah. He was truly everything she had left in the world, and he was more than willing to walk through it with her. It was all right, so I reached out to take her shoulder. Diana looked over, seeing the comfort in my eyes despite her broken gaze. Before I could speak, however, a familiar purple light glowed from the Demon Lord's body, catching our eyes and causing us all to look over in shock. What was happening? What the? Before our eyes, a faint purple orb slowly appeared and bobbed up and down in the air, looking to us. The orb that had haunted me and was expelled from me floated over the dead body of the Demon Lord, as if it had been there the entire time. What? You. The orb moved in a circle around the Demon Lord's body, letting the faint trace trail behind it, temporarily draw a circle in the air. As it returned to its spot, it released a pulse of light. The light slowly drifted towards Diana, impacting her chest and making her glow a bit before the light faded away. Confused, Diana stared at the spirit, trying to figure out what it had done to her. Was it an attack? Slowly, Diana became wide-eyed at it in familiarity. With a shaky hand, Diana reached out towards the orb, lost emotion in her eyes as she kept her sights on the spirit.
Oh, Arabelle.
And there we go. That was a surprise. I knew about what the spirit was. I'm not that surprised, but still, it is still kind of a shock. I stared at Diana in shock. It had a name? How did Diana know the spirit at all? It was like she was grasping at straws. How could Diana have known who it was? They're probably gonna tell you anyway, but yeah, I'll explain once that's known. Yeah. The orb floated forward, stopping in front of the Demon Lord's corpse as Diana took a step towards it.
Hi, Azair.
I was wrong. Diana hit the nail on the head, on the head, okay, with its name and seemed to be acquainted with it. Diana took a couple more steps forward before dropping to her knees in the middle of the hall. I watched as tears began to stream down her face and her body began to quake. The orb slowly floated over to Diana and hovered just within arm's reach of her. Diana's hands shakily lifted up past her chest and over her mouth.
Orbel. It's okay. It's okay, big sister.
They're sisters. That's her unborn dead sister. So it would make sense how in the beginning it would make sense how she said the evil man killed me, and then the demon lord's laughing out, and then you're wondering how the fuck did the demon lord kill Orbel, or the orb, as we didn't know her name before. But now everything is clicking into place, and that makes me even sadder, is that we hurt Diana's unborn sister's spirit. And it's like, why? Okay, I've had enough of this. Let's just go. Big sister, Diana suddenly let out a tearful gasp before reaching forward and taking the orb into her arms, somehow pulling the orb into a tight embrace. The orb seemed to shimmer in the hug it was in, but didn't seem to react in any other way. Diana, however, became a weeping mess, crying and shaking while holding Orbel close.
Orbel!
I couldn't believe it. The spirit was Orbel? Diana's sister? What kind of coincidence was that? How did Diana not know herself? How did Orbel not tell me? It obviously knew that Diana just from how they were embracing. It also makes sense why we were behind Diana the entire time when we're always hugging her, and why the spirit was always possessing us and going towards more to Diana than Erik. Because Orbel and Diana are sisters, and she finds comfort with her, and it's like, I can't. My emotions are overwhelming again. I was crying like a baby. I was crying too, seeing that reunion and everything, and I was just like, oh my god, this came out as a huge shock to me, to be honest. I kind of predicted it, but then at the same time, it was still kind of shocking for me. Anyways, still, the sight of Diana and mournful tears gripped to my heart. Diana lost her sister and was suddenly was able to speak to her once more, even after Orbel's death. It was as if fate wanted to apologize for taking her family away. I almost became a crying mess myself. It was a very tearful reunion after a dramatic battle. I didn't know how to feel in the situation we were in. Diana didn't seem to care. She continued to cry and hold Orbel. Erik wrapped an arm around me, comforting me as I wiped my eyes and tried to avoid weeping. Diana, however, didn't seem to care about the tears running down her face.
This is the first time I've heard you cry, sister.
I'm sorry. I tried to save you. But
It's okay. The demon lord did this to me.
Cry. It suddenly made sense. See? Orbel was an unborn baby, so it wouldn't have known its name. The demon lord was the one who killed her, so the puzzle pieces were connecting perfectly. Orbel then phased out of Diana's hands, making the demoness gasp and look up at the orb. Orbel, however, floated in place in front of Diana as she continued to speak.
The demon lord made me find the human.
I still kind of don't get this. Oh my god, there's so much more, but I'm not going to spoil it. I want to act surprised for you, but at the same time I don't. And I was just, I don't know. When the time comes, I'll do whatever comes to my mind. What? Orbel was working for the Demon Lord? She helped the imps bring me to the demon world?
Orbel, you were in the human all along? Why not just tell me? Why?
He made me. But now I have nowhere to go.
Oh, Orbel.
Something in the air didn't seem right. Something about Orbel became off and I couldn't place a finger on it. The more I stared, the more concerned I became and the heavier the nervousness in my gut grew. I don't like this.
Isaiah, I love you so much. But...
Oh my god, no! Don't put the but! Don't put the but in that sentence. This is gonna get me teary-eyed again. The air seemed to freeze and the room became still as Orabelle floated back towards the body of the Demon Lord. As Orabelle stopped, she began to glow a dark red and purple color.
I can't forgive you.
Oh my god, no, please! All at once, the orb flashed and vanished into thin air, only a misty gas present in the aftermath.
Orabelle!
We looked around, trying to pin down where she had gone, as the Demon Lord's hand suddenly lifted up and slammed into the ground. We shot our heads back at his corpse, seeing it begin to animate. Well, shit. The Demon Lord slammed his other hand to the ground and began to push himself up, curling his shoulders over and using whatever strength he had in getting onto his knees and eventually his feet. What? Orabelle, why? I still don't get why. The Demon Lord's body stood up and steadied itself on the ground on its 2 feet, heavy and void of life. What was happening? How could this be? As the Demon Lord's head lifted to look up at Diana, I gasped. His eyes were glossed over in a dark purple, almost black color. Blood continued to pour from the wounds of the body, but the body continued to move as if it had a small breath of life. His mouth dropped and began to mold itself into forming words, dead and echoey with Orabelle's voice seeping through it.
You let him kill me. You let him kill mother and father.
Orabelle!
You let the human live and let us die. I can never forgive you.
Shit. The sudden twist of events, people. The voice of the Demon Lord and Orabelle seemed to fuse in a dissonant harmony. As the body slowly began to march forward towards the unmoving Diana. My mind screamed for her to move and run, but Diana didn't seem to be immobile at the oncoming danger. Diana, move! She remained in place, shocked and frozen at what her sister had said and done. I could barely make out her hair and body shuddering in natural fear, but she wouldn't move at all. Grab her! I'm not calling her out. There was no way I was going to let Orabelle hurt her, sister or not. I rushed forward and grabbed Diana by the horns, pulling her back as fast as I could. Ah! Diana gripped onto my hands, digging her nails into my skin, but I didn't care. I needed to bring her away from the incoming enemy. As I dragged her back, Orabelle watched, unamused by my intrusion. I could only glare back, despite Diana flailing in my arms. She wouldn't take her away. I wouldn't let her. I finally released Diana's horns and stepped forward, placing myself between the two sisters. I won't let you hurt her! Orabelle loomed toward us, filling me with dread. The stench of the Demon Lord's corpse became unbearable, despite not being dead long. I still had no energy to fight, the realization making me step back from the undead Demon Lord.
You hurt me.
Hurt me.
Now I'll hurt you.
Orabelle picked up the Demon Lord's broken blade parts and slammed them together, fusing them back into one sword with her energy. How was that possible? She was a spirit! Orabelle then started to charge at us, raising the sword barely over Erik's and my head. I prepared to defend, but was blocked by the back of Erik's head in a wave of ethereal tendrils. All at once, the tendrils grabbed hold of the sword and forced it away. Around Erik's body was a deep aura of red and purple mist, swirling in the air and wrapping around his summoned tendrils. As he stepped forward, Orabelle surprisingly stepped back.
I won't let you hurt the one I love.
Ooh, with a snarl, Orabelle lunged at Erik, trying to wrap her arms around him, but was pushed away by Erik's tendrils. Orabelle and Erik charged at one another, Orabelle gripping to Erik's outstretched tendrils and began to push at each other. The wounds on the demon's body began to open and bleed further, causing it to quake as it pushed against Erik's strength.
You won't last long in that body. Give up.
Shut up! Shut up, shut up, shut up!
With her screams, Orabelle knocked away the tendrils before her and managed to get close to Erik, but not without impaling herself on traps Erik placed around him, which caused spikes to shoot up and into the rotten body of the Demon Lord. Disgusted at the sight and smell, Erik used his tendrils to shove Orabel off of him and towards the opposite end of the room, where Orabel slid and rolled against the marble, painting it red and black with blood. Quickly, Orabel jumped back up and began to howl and scream, her cries filling the room and making it quake violently. Gah! I held my head, trying to block out the sound, but her cries began to fill in my head with dissonant pain. Erik, in defiance, sprayed a volley of spikes at her. All landed on target. The spikes remained in the corpse, but Orabel continued to move, desperate to fight back with everything she had. What was wrong with her? How was she able to keep going? Were spirits really that powerful? I quickly grabbed Diana, pulling her up to her feet, and ran to the corner of the room, needing to be in the room still to help Erik, but desperate to keep Orabel away from Diana. Orabel! Diana began to flail and fight back, but I dug my nails into Diana's sides, forcing her back with gritted teeth. Diana! Move! As Diana's back hit the corner of the room, I could hear Erik release a grunt of pain, causing me to look over my shoulders to see what had happened. Erik, having knocked away a slash of from Orabel's sword, unfortunately couldn't block a fist from sending Erik flying at the wall. Erik's body slammed into the stone as he fell onto the ground. Gasping for air and curled over himself from the pain. Erik! I instantly rushed over and knelt at Erik's side, wrapping an arm over him as he slowly began to rise back up.
I'm fine, Princess.
I shook my head and looked to Orabel, seeing her slowly make her way towards us. I was certain that the body she was using was drained of any blood, yet she managed to keep it moving with her own energy. It was morbidly disgusting to see, but I was forced to bear witness as it came closer to where we were. What are we going to do? Erik and I looked to each other, desperate to find an answer in each other's eyes. However, one finally appeared in my mind. According to Diana, when I had Orabel within me, I was overflowing with energy. If I was still standing, then I still had some left. There wasn't enough for me to fight, but there was enough to give to Erik to possibly help him. I suddenly grabbed Erik's face and kissed him, willing my energy into his body. Erik, despite naturally accepting it, stared wide-eyed at me in surprise. Oh my god, that's so funny. He's just like, what? The fuck are you doing? We're like fighting someone here. I know you want to kiss me, but still, we're fighting someone here. That's basically what his muffled meant. I didn't want to pass out, so I pulled away when I began to feel lightheaded. I hoped and prayed that it was enough to end this fight, so I smiled at Erik, nodding to him. Finish this so we can go home. I quickly collapsed onto my hands, panting for air. The room began to spin, but I had to shake it off. I had to see this through. Erik gazed at me before nodding and turning to Orabel, who was halfway across the room. Slowly, Erik rose to his feet and summoned his mob of tendrils, each dancing and waving like angry snakes in the air.
You've been in my way for long enough, spirit.
Walking forward, Erik lashed out his tendrils at Orabel, whipping and snapping at the body she was possessing and forcing it back, despite her attempts to block and force them away. Every so often, a spike would fly from Erik's ring of tendrils, piercing into Orabel like a skewer. As Erik passed the Demon Lord's sword, he reached down and picked it up, surprisingly with ease. I could barely stand, gripping onto the wall as I watched Erik lift the sword to his side.
You possessed my wife, brought her to this world, and dared to attack her? All because of what my father did to you. Pitiful.
Orabel let out a threatening and frightening shout, lurching forward to try and tackle Erik, but was pushed away by the Demon Lord's blade and Erik's tendrils, causing her to knock into and collapse one of the nearby pillars. Orabel slowly rise, pushing the debris off of her, but before glaring hard at Erik, Erik glared back in kind before raising his father's blade up to his side, preparing to charge forward with it to plunge into her.
I will send you to purgatory and free you from your suffering.
With one last cry, Erik ran and thrust the Demon Lord's sword forward into Orabel, causing her to cry out. The room began to vibrate and quake, causing me to cover my head. However, Erik released the hilt of the sword and rushed back to me. A bright light filled the room, blinding Erik and I. Erik gripped onto me, trying to cover my body with his, but the white color of the flash invaded my vision. Silence slowly consumed the air as my world became blank like a canvas. I looked up at last to see the spirit orb bobbing up and down in the air.
You saved me. Thank you. You freed me at last.
Oribel. The orb spun around itself once, releasing a small giggle. It seemed overjoyed, despite what had just happened earlier. Had Oribel been under some sort of corruption?
I can finally go home.
Oribel.
Oh my god, I'm gonna get teary again. I turned my head to see Diana slowly walking forward to be by my side, staring at the orb in both sadness and relief. Oribel floated over to hover in front of Diana, a soft line of sadness in her own voice.
I'm sorry, big sister,
It's all right. You're free now.
Diana wrapped her arms around Oribel, laying her cheek softly on the orb as it flickered a warm glow. The air was calm, and the love between Diana and Oribel seemed to hum with the orb's light. However, Diana was still alive, and I could tell that this was her final goodbye to the sister she never got to meet. It was heartwarming as well as bittersweet, but Diana deserved proper closure with the sister she grew to love.
Tell Mother and Father that I'm all right, okay?
I will.
Oribel?
Diana and I suddenly looked into the light around us, hearing a man's voice. Oribel spun around in a circle, letting out a happy gasp.
Father? Father!
Oribel quickly left Diana's arms and began to fly into the bright light, but stopped and spoke once more.
Take care of the world, okay? You're everyone's mother now, sister.
Aww. Diana grinned and chuckled a bit, stray tears falling down from the sides of her face.
I'll do my best.
Bye-bye, human!
Bye, Oribel. Oh my god, I'm gonna start crying again. Shit. Bye! I couldn't help waving the orb as the orb finally faded away into the light. As the world returned to me to the Great Hall, I found myself still wrapped in Erik's arms. I looked up to see him staring down at me in worry, like I had passed out. Erik?
Love, are you all right?
I nodded. I was all right now. The battle was over and I was free to return home. Great sacrifices were made, but it was all over now. I was going home. Diana, who had been sitting in the corner of the room, braced her knees to her chest, taking in what had happened as well. I was positive that she was truly there and with me to say goodbye to Oribel, so she had to recuperate.
Sarah.
At her voice, a soft flash of light pulsed in front of her before revealing Sarah, out of breath.
My lady!
Despite being out of breath, Sarah quickly dropped to his knees and wrapped his arms around Diana.
I was on my way to tell you! We've won! We forced the enemy to dissolve and surrender and...
Shut up.
Aw. Sarah flinched before Diana wrapped her arms around his chest and pulled him tightly against her.
Just hold me.
Aww. Aww. My heart! My heart cannot take this! Ah! Sarah stared down at Diana before nodding and embracing her, resting his head against hers comfortingly. I could barely hear soft sobbing from her, but I was glad to know that Sarah was there for her. I looked up at Erik and smiled before kissing him, relishing in the victory of the rebellion and the release of my curse. I was finally going home. It was over. The war was finally over.
Well, you did it! Congratulations! You've made it to the end of your story. I have to say, I am very surprised at how it turned out.
Oh, trust me, I was the first time.
Nevertheless, I'm glad things worked out in the end, whether it was for the better or otherwise. I mean, who would have thought that Diana's own sister was the one that brought you to the demon world? It's a small universe, isn't it?
I guess you could say that.
However, your love came through in the end. With your strength, Erik was finally able to defeat Oribel and send her to the afterlife, where she belonged.
Yes, and that separation was heartbreaking, and I was about to cry again. God damn it! I can't decide which one is sadder, Matthew or Liz. I can't. I just can't. I think Matthew's was probably more sadder because Matthew had to kill his own mother. Oh my god.
Anyways, you've been through a lot, so why don't we skip to... Huh? You want to know what happened after the war? Well, I'm after you with the entire
happened.
As Diana, the other rebel leader, Diana had, and I believe that is Erik and you returned home. And since everything was taken care of before he found you, you got ready for the actual wedding.
Yay!
Huh? How do I know? Well, I have my ways. Maybe you should check it out.
Now that I was unhindered by a spirit I couldn't control, I was able to finally move on and say yes to Erik with every ounce of my heart in our wedding vows. My entire being became light as I watched his expression melt into an endless joy at my vows to him. Our kiss was as magical as a fairy tale prince and princess kiss, glowing in positive and hopeful energy as the people who watched cheered in congratulations. I could go on and on about the wedding and the honeymoon, but honestly, after the war, I was more concerned of living my life afterwards. Our lives escalated to new heights after we officially became husband and wife. Excuse me. Erik started a chain of suit shops and had become a very powerful man in the fashion business industry. Woo! He is owning it with a line of clothes. It was rather hilarious to see him square up James every fitting he needed with a smirk of equal standing to his once upper-tier brother. Aww! As for me, I began to go through my own success in life, dedicating myself to becoming exactly what I wanted to be. After all, my husband had made a name for himself in the fashion world. If I put the same amount of work in as I did in the demon world, then I was going to be okay. However, there was never a day that went by that I didn't think about what was happening in the Abyssal Plains. It was a heavy chapter of my life, one that tested the love between me and Erik. To think that I was under the influence of a child who needed to be set free still astounded me to no end. For a moment, I myself almost believed that I was pregnant instead. Thankfully, that wasn't the case. Trust me, I would have been relieved too. Still, I was confident that we would get through it and stay together no matter what came our way. Demon, devil, spirit, it didn't matter to us. We were unstoppable together. The faint memory of my own power slightly tingled through me every time I grew confident, eagerly reminding me that I had strength of my own. I would never let anyone come between me and Erik ever again. The thoughts of it all echoed in my mind as I sat in bed, looking up at the ceiling with a wide smile on my face. Despite the dangers being real, the war was an adventure fun to look back upon in my memories. I took in a breath and let out a sigh, leaning back against the bedposts and closing my eyes. I was at peace and everything was all right.
Princess?
Erik! I opened my eyes at the sound of my pet name, looking up to see Erik at the door, smiling at me and holding a plate of food. Unlike the demon world, this world had the makings of pastries, eggs, bacon, and sausage, and other delicious concoctions made for the early morning. As I took in the sight of all my favorite foods on the plate in Erik's hand, I licked my lips and let out a happy hum. Hey, that looks delicious.
And it's all for you.
All for me? None for you? Thank you, you are a true man. I was squealing internally, feeling a bit spoiled at the treatment he was giving me. I spoiled my Prince Charming, he spoils me, his princess. As he walked over and sat on the edge of the bed, Erik handed me the plate and I watched as I accepted it and took a bite of what he offered, groaning at the amazing taste. With a smile, I took some of it onto the fork that was on the plate and offered it to Erik, seeing him stare at me in slight surprise before smiling and taking the bite, licking his lips after. Thank you, Erik. You spoil me.
Anything for you, my sweet princess.
Aww, this makes my heart warm. This is my Uberis. Ubetis. My Ubetis. Okay, I'll stop now. I giggled at the name, nuzzling Erik's hand as it came up to caress my cheek, lovingly. His hands were always so soft and warm, perfect to hold me and make me feel loved and safe. I opened an eye to look up at him cutely, seeing him blush with a smile of his own.
I would happily do anything for you.
Anything?
Anything. Just name it.
I cupped his hand and gently placed a kiss over his palm, feeling him stare in surprise at the gesture. I could almost hear the blush on his face intensifying before I even looked back at him to confirm it. He was red as an apple. Perfect. I giggled again and nuzzled his hand, almost laying my head on it. Be with me forever? It took a small, cute moment for Erik to regain his composure before nodding, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear.
Forever and always.
Yes. Hold me every day and every night?
As close as I can hold you to me.
Sweet waves of joy rushed through me every answer he gave, confirming his devotion and love for me. I was so lucky to have him as my own, and I could tell that he believed himself to be the lucky one. In honesty, we were both the lucky ones, perfectly blending together and devoting ourselves to each other without second thoughts. We proved it in the demon world, and we would prove it for the rest of our lives. I gently pulled Erik towards me, moving the plate between us to the nightstand, smiling as he came close before capturing his lips with mine in a loving kiss. He was definitely surprised, but it wasn't long before he began to kiss back just as passionately. The gentle taste of roses and rain always made me feel at peace, and I always managed to find it on Erik's lips. He was my perfect prince, and I was his loving princess. Our mansion was a castle, and the human world was our kingdom to explore. What story could have been better? As we gently pulled away, we gazed into each other's eyes, becoming lost in them. All I could see in his purple irises were waves of love and care, filling my heart with everlasting peace. I began to wonder what he saw in my eyes. Whatever it was, he became entranced and could do nothing but wrap his free arm around me, pulling me to him lovingly.
Everything in my life belongs to you. My heart, my body, my soul, everything. I swear to give you everything I am, and love you until the end of time. Nothing will tear me away from you.
Oh, this is like the sweetest thing. Do you see why he is my Ubetus now? Do you see why he's the #1 bit? Do you see this? Sometimes I get sad that Sam is the canon route and not Erik. But then again, I get happy that Sam is the canon route because shit happens and like it makes me happy. But still, times like this, I'm like, why didn't you make Erik the canon route? He's my love. My love. Erik. With a tender kiss on my forehead, Erik's expression softened to a gaze of deep love.
I love you, princess. I love you so much.
My heart is screaming. I believed every word. I let his words embed themselves into my heart, and I would remember them forever. As Erik kissed me again, locking lips with mine, he sealed his words. I would love him and continue to hold him close for the rest of my life. Nothing would be able to tear me away from him any longer. And that was my perfect happily ever after. And hopelessly devoted to you. And did it! I'm going to skip that anyway. And we did it! We finished Erik's route. And I'm just covered with emotions and whatnot. It's like, Erik has truly captivated my heart and will always be my hashtag Ubetus. So anyways, that's the end of this. It's Erik's route. End of this episode. So in the next video, we will be doing James. That's right. The gentleman awaits us in the next video. And then we'll finally do the last one, which is Sam. Hopefully I can finish before I go on vacation. I can finish all of the guys and start a new game when I come back and if I have time to record. So yeah, we're going to start James's route in the next episode. Glad you stuck with me for Erik's route. Hashtag Ubetus. My bae. Yep. Thank you for sticking with me. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more of my videos, then click subscribe. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!